It is the Resistance Report for February 16th, 2017. Good evening. Did you happen to watch Donald Trump's news conference today? It was supposed to be a rollout of his new pick for Secretary of Labor, but within a few minutes, he went off the rails. He went off the bend. He went into Donald Trump land, and it became an hour and 17 minutes of a rant against the media, against leaks, even against the intelligence community. If you haven't seen it, you ought to look at it. And I ask you to look at it not because there was so much interesting information, but this performance of Donald Trump's made me really begin to worry that our president doesn't have it all together in any meaningful sense of the term. Not only that he is a pathological narcissist and also has some aspects in his behavior of being a sociopath, but that he really does not have all his, well, how can I say this nicely? Well, maybe the best way to do it is to turn to our reading tonight, which is Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate, that's the Vice President or the President pro tempore of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. After today's performance, I no longer think that Donald Trump will be removed because he will be impeached, because I don't think he'll get that far. I think that there is something seriously, seriously wrong. And that's not a good thing, folks. There is 4.5 minutes between the time that nuclear missile, the first one, goes off and when it lands somewhere around the world. And he has those nuclear codes. Anyway, what I really want to talk to you tonight is something a little bit more upbeat. No, it's about the truth. It's not upbeat. It's actually what I consider to be one of the most damaging legacies of what has happened in the first 3.5, almost 4 weeks of the Donald Trump presidency. The truth is the most essential common good in any democracy. Every day, Donald Trump is eroding it, and he is using one of a bunch of maybe 5 techniques to erode the truth. First of all, he is telling big lies. He did it again today at that press conference. We'll come to it in a moment. About what has occurred in our democracy over and over again. He claims a landslide victory. He claims massive voting fraud. His surrogates claim massive voting fraud. They did it again last weekend. There is absolutely no evidence of either of these propositions. But if you say them over and over and over again, people begin, not only some people to believe them, but others to get confused about what the truth is. And thereby, Donald Trump is creating a mandate for himself and a concern about voting fraud, neither of which has any basis in fact. The second erosion of truth, the second big problem with the erosion of truth, is he's telling big lies directly through tweets, and also soon another rally. And when you tell direct lies to the public, directly, without any intermediaries, without the press or anybody else to counteract what you are saying, to ask you questions, to remind the public that maybe you're not telling the truth, then you might be able to get away with it because the public has no basis, no means of questioning what you are saying. In tweets, in rallies, in televised rallies. Number 3, Trump is making it harder for Americans every day to get access to scientific facts. He's putting gag orders on agencies, the EPA, scientists at the Energy Department. He's removing data and having data removed from department websites. Almost every department of government now, the websites, and there are people watching this, the websites are losing the data they used to have, the facts they used to contain. And number 4, Donald Trump is attempting to control agencies that are directly responsible for coming up with facts, particularly facts he doesn't like. For example, he's having his own loyalist, Wall Street billionaire Steven Feinberg, lead a broad review of American intelligence agencies. Now, you've got to understand, Feinberg has no qualifications at all for this except that he is a Trump loyalist, an old Trump friend. His only experience with national security matters is his firm's stakes in a private security company and 2 gun manufacturers. So the only possible reason for doing this review with Feinberg has nothing to do with making national security more efficient or the intelligence agencies better prepared or enabling them to do their work better. No, this is a Trump loyalist who knows nothing about intelligence but knows how to protect Donald Trump. That's what this review is all about, protecting Trump, protecting him from facts that he doesn't want, protecting him from the possible leakage of facts that he doesn't want emanating from the intelligence agencies at all. In other words, this is all about curtailing the independence and the integrity of the intelligence agencies with regard to all sorts of matters where the intelligence agencies have already said in one way or another that they disagree with Trump's conclusions, with Trump's ideas of what the facts are. And this includes, number 1, Iran and the Iran nuclear deal. Trump is very much against it. The intelligence agencies are providing information suggesting that actually it is having an effect. Donald Trump doesn't want to hear that, and so he doesn't want that information. Or number 2, the utility of NATO. Well, the intelligence agencies apparently keep on coming up with information showing that NATO is very important. Donald Trump doesn't want to hear that because he wants to erode, undermine, get rid of, maybe, NATO. How best to deal with Islamic militancy? Well, Donald Trump doesn't believe the intelligence agencies are correct. He wants to just have Muslim bans and create the impression in the Muslim world that the United States is against Islam. Well, the intelligence agencies are keeping and continuing to say that is the wrong approach. That's going to endanger the United States. Donald Trump doesn't want to hear that. So part of his review of the intelligence agencies is likely to be to prevent that kind of information from surfacing. And then we come to Vladimir Putin. Now, what do you think the intelligence agencies are telling Donald Trump that he doesn't want them to even investigate or know about? Well, this isn't too difficult, is it? Because they have found and are on the trail to finding even more data, information, intelligence about communications between Donald Trump or his aides during the campaign and after the campaign and Russian operatives. The trail is coming closer and closer to Donald Trump. Obviously, he wants that trail stopped. That's what this review of the intelligence agencies is all about. So not only can they not leak information, but they can't even get information. Meanwhile, number 5, how is Donald Trump dealing with truth? How is he undermining truth? His 5th technique is to berate the media and undermine public confidence in the media's reliability. You see, if he can do that, then where do we go? Where do we go for truth? Then it's more likely that we'll just believe whatever Donald Trump has to say. Now, that gets me back to the press conference today. Now, it was, as I said, supposed to be a chance for him to introduce his new pick for labor secretary, but he railed at 1 hour and 17 minutes, blasting the dishonesty, the out of control. He called them out of control media. He is out of control. He called them the out of control media, accusing reporters of distorting facts in order to help, quote, special interests, unquote. Now think about that for a minute. He's accusing the media of distorting facts, of not being truthful with the American public in order to satisfy special interests. Who are these special interests, by the way, the media is supposed to be kowtowing to? Now, we know special interests in Washington, and we have a good reason to believe that Donald Trump is quite close to some special interests, including Wall Street and big corporations and their executives, a lot of very wealthy people, a lot of people who are investing in Trump properties, and maybe even a special interest called Putin's Russia. But what exactly is the special interest that the media are supposedly acting on behalf of? He doesn't say. Probably not the rich. Maybe Donald Trump is referring to, could it be blacks and Latinos and Mexicans and Muslims and immigrants and Jews and the kind of people who inhabit places that Donald Trump said the media inhabits, places like New York, Los Angeles, Washington? There are no special interests. And by the way, what is the media's motive for being dishonest, Mr. Trump? What do you think the media is doing? Why is it doing it? He says, and I'm going to quote, "The media is trying to attack our administration because they know we are following through on pledges we made, and they're not happy about it for whatever reason." Well, Donald Trump continues to confuse, or he wants to confuse the public in terms of truthful reporting and media dishonesty. That is, he wants the public to believe that reporting about the chaotic consequences of his Muslim ban, the firing of his national security director, Michael Flynn, the contacts between his aides and Russia and Putin during and after the campaign, that his lies about voter fraud and so forth, that the media is actually the one who's telling the lies, that these actually are truthful, all of them, and the media is making them out to seem that they are bad somehow. Well, let me suggest to you that Donald Trump may be the culprit here, and that the media may be reporting on what he is doing to our benefit. Another big lie during that press conference, Donald Trump said, "I turn on the TV and open the newspaper and see stories of chaos. Chaos! Yet it's the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine." A fine-tuned machine? With your national security advisor fired? With your Secretary of Labor nominee pulling out? With your travel ban held up in the courts and creating complete chaos in terms of administering it? And you call that a finely tuned machine? Here's another big lie from today, from this afternoon. Quote, "People came out and voted like they've never seen before," he said. "More electoral votes in the Electoral College than any president since Ronald Reagan." That's what he said. Well, I looked into that, just doing my own fact-checking. I thought it was interesting. Ronald Reagan did get a lot of electoral votes. That is true, over his opponent, Jimmy Carter. But it turns out that every president since Ronald Reagan, except George H.W. Bush, that is, Ronald Reagan. In other words, the point that Trump was making, that he got more electoral votes than any president since Ronald Reagan, was a lie. And then when some reporter called him on it, he said, "Well, I don't know. I was given that information." Now, I mentioned before, another way that he is undermining the truth is trying to seek ways to connect directly with the public without any intermediaries so that he can tell big lies unopposed. Well, he will hold his first rally since becoming president this Saturday in Melbourne, Florida. Sean Spicer was asked about it. He didn't seem to have very much information. He said, "It's being run by the campaign." By the campaign? Spicer did not explain why Trump would be holding a campaign rally 4 weeks after taking office. What campaign? Are we back in a campaign? Maybe we never left the campaign. Maybe we'll never leave the campaign. Now here is why he's holding a rally. If by calling it a campaign rally, he is able to filter who's there. He's able to make sure that there are no protesters there. He can do the same thing he did when he was on his own campaign trail, and that is make sure that anybody who is in any way not enthusiastically pro-Trump doesn't get in to the rally. And then he's got TV cameras, and he'll say things, and it will look to the public as if he has nothing but extraordinarily enthusiastic support. In other words, he is creating, by calling it a campaign rally, he is creating his own show. That has nothing to do with reality. That's another lie. But it will come across as if he is nothing but a hero to everybody. And obviously, the other reason for doing that is so he can tell all his lies, as many lies as he wants about a record turnout at his inauguration, a landslide victory in terms of votes, a record for the Electoral College, a massive voting fraud, and he can go on, and people will yell and scream, and then he'll talk about the dishonest press, and they will clap, and they'll applaud, and they'll yell, and they'll scream, and the public watching this on television will get the impression, again, another big lie, will get the impression that Americans really do believe this rubbish. Over the last 100 years, we've had experience with tyrants. There is a very sad history over the last 100 years, mostly in Europe and Japan, of what happens when a country actually is taken over, when truth disappears. Tyrants have undermined press independence while creating their own direct lines of communication. By the way, that rally in Melbourne, Florida, you might consider attending it. Maybe you should pretend that you are a big Trump supporter. Get into the rally. And then, once you're into the rally, make a huge, huge ruckus. And so the television cameras can show what the Trump thugs will do to people who speak out. The truth is the most essential common good in any democracy. We must protect it. We must protect it even from Donald Trump, especially from Donald Trump. So I will now take your questions. This is from Beth Fenwick. Do you think Bannon will send violent counter-protesters to Trump's weekend rally? Well, Beth, that's an interesting question. If you are really conspiratorially minded, you might think that Bannon would certainly send violent counter-protesters. Let's talk about whether they are counter-protesters and whether they are violent to the rally. I perhaps am not yet that cynical. I hope I'm right and you're wrong. This is from Nick Tai West. Why is the Republican Party allowed to investigate itself? Why do they have the power to say no to investigating the Russian ties when they're the ones being investigated? Well, that is a central question right now. There ought to be a select congressional committee made up half Republicans, half Democrats, with the power to hire an independent special prosecutor, and let's make this investigation a real investigation. Right now, the Senate Intelligence Committee is under the control of Republicans. So even though they say they're investigating these ties and connections and contacts between Trump, or at least Trump's people, before and after the election, and Soviet Russian operatives. How can we be sure they're doing that? We can't. They obviously don't want Republicans and the Republican Party to suffer. Same thing with the FBI. I wish Comey could be counted on, but can we really count on him as FBI director, particularly when you have Jeff Sessions as Attorney General looking over his shoulder? That's why we need a select committee. We need an independent special prosecutor. We need Democrats to have as much power over this as Republicans. Deborah Barry, are there no limits on spending taxpayer dollars to support Trump's lavish lifestyle? Well, Deborah, apparently there are not, in the sense that the Secret Service has got to be there protecting him and his family. As long as part of his family remains in New York, the Secret Service is going to be there in New York, spending millions and millions of your dollars and my dollars. And they're also going to be protecting his sons and Ivanka when they are out doing Trump Organization business. And that's going to cost us millions and millions of dollars more. I think that there ought to be a law. Congress could pass a law tomorrow saying that as long as a president does not put his assets into a blind trust, then the money taxpayers spend trying to protect his family operating his business should be not on taxpayers. That should all be reimbursed to taxpayers by that president and by that business. Carolyn Lansdale Flynn, I don't understand Trump calling them illegal leaks. Certainly no classified information has been released, right? And Flynn was still a private citizen. Don't we have a right to know when a citizen behaves treasonously? Well, Carolyn, when Trump calls them illegal leaks, what he's really talking about is that the intelligence agencies should not have leaked them, this information, to the media. He says that's illegal because that's information about potential illegality. As you said, even potential treasonous behavior. It's also information about what the Russians and Russian operatives are doing. And the irony, of course, is that Trump is saying it's all illegal leaks. But what makes them illegal leaks is the premise that the actions themselves are illegal and potentially traitorous. And that's what Trump wants to do. He wants to turn it upside down. So we're focusing on the leaks instead of focusing on the substance of the leaks. Katrina Shelty, do you know where the emoluments clause lawsuit is in the process? Katrina, it's still getting off the ground. There is a lawsuit, and it is a lawsuit that says essentially that Donald Trump is violating the emoluments clause by holding all of these businesses and profiting from all of these businesses and raking in money, as, for example, foreign governments stay at the Trump International Hotel. That is still in its beginning stages, and there is an issue of who has standing to bring that kind of lawsuit. Jackie Newman, if Trump gets impeached and Pence gets sworn in, will he have the same inept cabinet members, or does he pick his own? Jackie, I believe that if a vice president takes over, now we don't have much historical record on this, but technically and legally, a vice president is now a president, and he could have his own cabinet, could send new people in for confirmation, could fire everybody. In fact, Trump could fire every cabinet member tomorrow and have a brand new cabinet if he wanted. I don't think that Pence would do that. Pence was, remember, in charge of finding these cabinet members, these cabinet peoples. He did the searches. These people reflect Pence's judgment as much, if not more, than they do Trump's judgment. Next question. Two more. Debbie Dye. Can laws be put in place so that people cannot pay to be appointed to office, such as Betsy DeVos? Debbie, we could certainly, Congress could put a law into effect. I don't think it would violate the First Amendment, and certainly it would not run counter to the Citizens United case of the Supreme Court. Congress certainly could have a law that, and as it does with regard to qualifications for other offices, if you want to be a cabinet member, you cannot have made contributions over a certain limit to members of Congress or to the person who is then president. I think that's a good idea. Why buy your way? Why allow that kind of palpable, obvious corruption of our entire system? Why allow individuals to buy their way, not just into cabinet appointments, but also into ambassadorships, which is the traditional way that presidents reward big money big financiers. This is the last question. J. Arnold Jackson, you've discussed that you'd go into impeachment details. When will you do this? Well, I'll do it next week, or I'll do it tomorrow, whenever you want to do it. No time tonight, though. Let me just say again, this is not a normal president. It's not a normal time. And if today's press conference does not convince you that we've got to not only fight Donald Trump, urge Congress to use the 25th Amendment or to impeach him, actively fight and urge and push members of Congress to get some backbone against Donald Trump. If today's press conference doesn't convince you of all that, it may at least convince you that we are not dealing with a normal president. This is not a matter of left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. This should not be considered a partisan issue. And every time I talk with Republicans, and I do talk with Republicans quite a lot, who tell me they are scared, they are worried about Donald Trump, my reaction to them is, why don't you go public? Certainly, if you are a Republican office holder, go public. And what they say back to me is, oh no, I can't do that because I'd be excluded. I'd be shunned by other Republicans. Well, at some point, I don't think in the far distant future, Republicans are going to realize that the emperor has no clothes and that it is perfectly permissible, if not honorable, for Republicans to say publicly what they've been saying privately to one another, and even to somebody like me, and that is that Donald Trump is dangerous. He's off the rails. He's not normal. And we, as a society, as a nation, we are in danger as long as he continues to be president. That's the end of tonight's Resistance Report. I'll see you tomorrow.